excited to have Lori here. Lori makes a living, or she used to make her living working and calling on Fortune 500 companies, dealing with all the big, these are the big billion-dollar industries out there and doing all that. And now she helps nonprofits reach out to them. And one of the things that really intrigued us is she said it's not for just the big nonprofits, it's for everyone.
Right.
And the different mindsets and things like that. So we want to just give her a big welcome. Thank you for coming on, Lori.
Thanks a ton for coming,
I'm glad
Lori.
to be here.
Yeah, we're always
housekeeping things.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, just a couple of housekeeping things. Yeah. Chats on the right, Q&A down there, please. Anytime you have a question, hit it. We will make sure we'll get to every one of them. We'll be out of here in the hour. If this is your first time here, stay to the end. We will be giving away a prize that you'll be able to use, a trip actually, that you'll be able to use for your next fundraiser.
It's not going to be this framed.
Money.
This is my 4-year-old daughter, and I traced this last night. We could give this away as a gift, as a frame.
Yeah, that's it. We're going to, that's it.
Well, so we'll give you an option to use that. But well, Lori, it's so awesome to have you. And we're always orbiting this topic, this mindset and positivity topic. We bounce around it. Like I said, we orbit it. So it's amazing to have someone, with your acumen, an expert in the space.
Glad to be here and help.
So thankful. Yeah, Lori Zoss Kraska, everyone. So thanks so much for coming.
Sure.
Really cool. Jason mentioned that your background, and it was advertising. You were getting advertising for public television, correct?
Yes. Yeah, yes. They call it underwriting. We can't call it advertising.
Correct.
In public media.
Well, I think it's apropos. Actually, I'm glad we call it underwriting, because that kind of like dovetails into raising money for nonprofits and whatnot. So tell us about your background, how you got started in that, and then how it kind of segued into what you're doing now, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So before I started my business, Growth Owl LLC, back in 2018, I spent just about 10 years in public media, both with PBS and NPR. Yep. A lot of people don't realize that they often share resources.
Correct.
And myself and I had a team that went, and we would speak with hundreds and sometimes thousands of large corporations, primarily Fortune 1000 or really large headquartered companies throughout the region. And we would do this on behalf of multiple stations. Yep. And this is how we would find sponsorship support or underwriting support for the program you watch on PBS or that you listen to on NPR. Right. And I absolutely loved my job. I loved working with my team. I loved engaging with corporations. And I thought to myself, it would be great if we could take this similar model and utilize it with traditional nonprofits or associations or startups who could really use help on how to navigate working with Fortune 1000 companies, because it truly is a fundraising beast of its own, as you probably know. 100%. So that's how I evolved into starting Growth Owl back in 2018. And I work with many different executive directors, presidents, vice presidents of development, startups, to help them create their messaging and be effective in front of corporate decision makers. Yep. I also do a very limited amount of representation for nonprofits, depending on my availability, and lots and lots of coaching and research services as well.
Yeah, awesome. So like you're talking about coaching them up, messaging, we talk about that a lot as well. Yeah. So explain to us in 2023, let's just get right into it with messaging. Like, what are you telling folks? Because I have an idea what the answer is. And, just because, we're less is more type people.
That's right. That's right.
Embellish about that. I think that's a huge point when it comes to speaking to these Fortune 1000s and your messaging and how you approach that in preparation.
Yeah. So let's take this all the way back to when you're first engaging someone at a corporation, whether it's via an email, you leave a voicemail, maybe you meet someone in person.
Right.
Utilizing the power of brevity is essential. And this is something I work with all of my clients. And I want you to think about brevity for a moment. We live in a society of 15-second pre-rolls where we already get antsy about watching a 15-second pre-roll ad before we get our content. That half-second notification to our phones. Our smartphones have basically changed our mental DNA on how we get information and process it, right? Mm-hmm. So, but what's still happening with a lot of nonprofits and associations, other purpose-driven organizations, when they outreach, they're just saying way too much.
I agree.
So I really coach a lot of my clients on that front end. When you first start engaging, you have to be brief, because realize that these corporate decision makers that have access to this money, whether it's philanthropic corporate money, corporate marketing, corporate social responsibility, DEI, what have you. They have thousands of other things on their plates. And the last thing that they want to see is a 600-word email talking about everything about your nonprofit. They're not going to read it. But if you could take your email, make it, like I say, about 150 words,
Right.
Who are you? How do you connect your specific organization? How does it connect with the mission, vision, and values of that corporation? And what is it you want next? A meeting, an opportunity to send information, what have you? That is going to just set you apart and really increase your chances of getting a response.
It's so good. I wish that idea was original to us, because we're here. We say it all the time, and we're hearing it from everyone. Experts in the space are saying the same thing. I really hope everyone understands that the brevity is a superpower.
Yeah, and I think, the thing to remember is, that first email, I think sometimes people feel like, well, I only have this one chance to get this right. That is not the mentality to have.
Yes.
The mentality is that you're on a journey. Your goal is to keep this person interested enough that you want a meeting, or that you want another opportunity to send information, not that I have to get it all done in this one email. If that's your mindset, you're not going to be successful. You have to stay positive and understand that corporate support is a long game. It is a process. Nothing in a corporation happens in one transaction. Just keep that in mind.
Well, is this kind of an analogy? I mean, you're developing a relationship.
That's how I thought. The same thing. Yeah, I mean, of course. Right?
I don't know who here has gotten married on their first date.
Yeah, exactly.
We're talking about,
who was picking out kids' names on the first date?
Right.
Well, no, I'm talking about literally going and getting married. I mean, it just doesn't happen that way. You got to get to know the person.
I thought that my mind went to the same place, brother. Yeah.
And doing all that, and I mean, I think that's one of the things. And we go, well, but we got all this information. They're going to want to, and let me ask you this. I had, back in my telecom days, I was listening to something on my team, and they were going through these questions. I said, why are you giving all this information to the client, to the customer? Mm-hmm. We were I had a telephone company, and we literally sold home phone service. And I said, why are you giving all this information to them? Well, because we've had that question asked before. I said, when? Well, about 6 months ago, but we just didn't want to have to answer it again.
Right.
Yeah. And it's like, okay,
I know what you're talking about.
And so it's like almost like, well, somebody maybe sometime has asked for it. So if I just load it all in there, they'll get everything. Is that kind of, but that's the opposite of what we've got to do.
Want that.
Yeah, every interaction is unique. And remember, you don't get to that uniqueness until you've moved past this initial engagement. In that initial engagement, it doesn't matter who you are and what your decision maker is. Everybody wants to know, what's the connection? Why are you contacting me? Quite frankly, why should I care? You have to make them care in that initial connection. And to do that is to find what is it that corporation does that resonates with what you're doing.
Totally. Jason says something frequently about when we're doing events. He came up with this beautiful 3-part series. Like, hey, this is what we've done, this is what we're doing, and this is what we plan on doing. This is why we need you to give. And it's all very mission focused. Yeah. I heard you. It sounded like you had like a triumvirate of things that you wanted to approach that initial contact with. Can you just give us just a quick? Like,
absolutely.
This is what we're doing from a mission perspective. You know what I mean?
So absolutely. So when you're putting, and we're going to stick to email, or even if you use a LinkedIn message, it's the same idea. Mm-hmm. So when you're outreaching, the first part is tell them who you are. What's your title? What's your role? What are you responsible for at your nonprofit? The second part of it is describe very briefly what your nonprofit is and what exactly is the program that you want to get funding for, or what specific part of the nonprofit are you interested in discussing more about? Right. And through your research, how does this corporation connect to the mission of either that program or your organization? So it's very easy to go out on the internet and find on the corporation's website, their annual report, their philanthropic giving interests, who they're supporting. So it could be something as simple as, well, I see that you support the Sierra Club. we're a locally based land conservation project. I think you see where I'm going. So it could be as simple as that. Or even going on LinkedIn and finding out that your decision maker has a personal interest in food insecurity. And you can reference that. It just shows that you did a little homework to make the connection. So that was part 2. And then part 3 is, what do you want next? Spell it out. Don't be squeamish. I'd like the opportunity to send more information. I'd love to have a 15-minute Zoom call with you. I'd like to be able to meet you in person. To ask them what you want. You won't know if you'll get it unless you ask. So that's the kind of the 3-part process I like to use. I love
that.
Can I stop and ask? I see you just said something that really intrigued me. You said, can I have a 15-minute Zoom call? One of the things that I hear everybody says, well, I'd like to take you to coffee, or I'd like you to go to lunch, or I'd like to do all that stuff. You know, and I get asked for calls and things like that. And of course, because we work all over the country, so it's real simple to say we're going to meet by Zoom. But even locally, even people, they'll say, hey, can we meet up? And I said, because for me, I think about time, how much time do I have?
15 minutes to get there.
Well, if I'm going to give you, if I've got an hour, you're only going to get about 30 minutes because I've got 15 minutes to get out, get ready, get there, do all the stuff. Then we have the time, and then I got to get back. So I just sit there and go, hey, could we just do a Zoom?
Let's hop on.
Something local. And they're like, oh yeah, we could do that. And it winds up because we get all that time. I think that's just and people are so tuned into it.
It sounds simple, but
that's something that
awesome.
you just, do you see the response being higher for that, especially for people that are busy and got stuff going on, rather than going to meet for coffee, lunch? Whatever.
Absolutely. Going back to brevity, we're also talking about brevity of someone's time, as you've both noted, but I'll tell you what tends to happen. It doesn't happen all the time, but I would see 7 times out of 10, whenever I or my clients do the 15-minute Zoom, they tend to go longer, but not based on what my client or what I want to do. The prospective corporation is elongating the conversation
because they're interested.
What I do, or what I have my clients do, is say, well, I see we're at 15. I just want to do a time check. I'm okay to keep going, but what about you? You're giving that person the power back of the time. And that is just a precious commodity. And I tell you, I am a big believer in that 15-minute Zoom, because a lot of times they'll go longer because your prospect wants them to go longer.
Because they got,
so make sure when you do that, don't book anything back to back.
I was going to say, give yourself a 30-minute window, right?
Because the last thing you want to do to somebody, they want to talk and go, I've got a hard stop in 5.
Right. Yeah. And a lot of times, if the corporate prospect only has 15 minutes, they will tell you.
Yeah.
100%. Right. 100%.
But they will assess you quickly. And if they're interested, you usually can get them to book additional time within the last few minutes of that call. I do find that as well.
Okay. Well, let's talk about this real quick.
Nuts and bolts stuff. Good stuff.
So
good stuff.
We've sent the email, let's just say we're doing this thing about the email, and, it's, again, brevity. Like I'm gonna make it up, okay?
Yeah.
Hi, Lori. And just tell me if I'm off or on, because I'd like to get some cues, and we got a question. But hi, Lori. Jason Ledlow with ABC Charity. Just wanted to reach out and touch base. We're a local company that says that is into the conservation. We know that you support some other on the national deal, and would love to talk to you about something here at home.
Yes. I would try to be a little more specific, but you pretty much have the more specific you can get, the more you're going to get the attention of your decision maker, because it shows that you've done the research. So instead of saying, I see that you support other conservation projects in the area, I would go further and say, I see that you're supporting the water conservation project over on East 6th Street.
Yeah.
That sounds a lot stronger than
specific.
Than something really generic. Yes.
Okay. I just had a little light bulb go off. Should we work on some elevator pitches? Like, if folks want to hop on, we want to just make it available for folks if they want to. If you don't want to, fine. But if you're like, hey, I'm working on this, I just have a couple ideas. If you want to hop on, we have Lori. We might as well use the expert's time if you're open to it. So
and remember, I do want to emphasize, though, there's a difference between the elevator pitch and what you're saying in this email.
Pardon me. Absolutely.
An elevator pitch tends to be, tell me quickly, what is your organization about?
But
with something else, you're customizing it a bit more. You're customizing it to your decision maker, right? So there is a little bit of a difference between an elevator pitch that you could generically give to anyone in an elevator versus specifically reaching out to someone at Apple versus reaching out to someone at Microsoft based on their funding interests.
Absolutely.
So I'll tell you what, I'm going to ask a question I think will tie into that is if somebody has something specific and you want to do, we'd love to do that. But let me ask you this. So I'm a nonprofit. We're got a $250,000 annual budget. We're doing stuff. We're probably just not in that league where anybody's going to be interested in us and from those companies, right? We're too small.
Oh, I disagree.
Yeah, good.
I gleefully disagree. So I got to tell you, in one area where corporations have gotten a lot better, and it seems like they've kind of, they've woken up to this about what's going on in their backyard with small nonprofits. What I'm finding is that they're starting to realize that if they have $20,000 to give, they're seeing that $20,000 can go a lot further in a small 2-person nonprofit versus $20,000 going to a local chapter of a multinational nonprofit. They're starting to realize that. Number 2, since 2020, a lot of corporations, especially the Fortune 1000s, are hiring specifically under the umbrella of philanthropy as well as CSR and DEI, people that specifically work with the community they're headquartered in. So 100%. Coca-Cola is a great example. Coca-Cola has a VP of social giving just for the city of Atlanta, where they are headquartered. So, that tells you that they're looking to make a much more smaller, or they want to commit to smaller nonprofits. So that is happening more now than ever. So really, and like I think Trevor, you said at the top of the hour here, it doesn't matter if you're a small nonprofit with a couple of people or a multi-office nonprofit throughout the country, the principles we're discussing are all the same in terms of approach.
Good. That was the aha moment. Yeah. Lori. I mean, we had a lovely discussion with Lori. I just want to make mention of it on our podcast. Hey, nonprofits raise more money. Lori came on. It was fantastic. Check it out as well. That was really, really cool. It was a big eye opener, Lori. And it was obviously the impetus to have you on today. So, okay. You said something about research. And researching the prospect. And I messed up by saying elevator pitch. I was just being, No,
it's all good.
But I totally get where you're coming from. And so, as far as what you're teaching folks to do, what you're teaching your clients to do, big, small, what are you teaching them to do as far as just research and just kind of how to? Give us some feedback on that, because I think people need to hear about it.
Yeah. So you want to research the company and you want to research your decision maker. So let's start with the decision maker. The best tool that you can use by far is LinkedIn. And I use LinkedIn is a huge part of my day. Whether I'm connecting with corporate decision makers for myself or on behalf of my client, or I'm doing training or just, working with other colleagues, LinkedIn is a huge part of what I do. And I can tell you, even in the, since I've been doing this since 2018, my success rate for connecting with high-level decision makers has actually increased in incorporating a LinkedIn message strategy compared to my email strategy. So I still utilize email, but in my strategy, I start with a LinkedIn message, and that's a very recent tool based on the success I'm having. So in LinkedIn profiles, you can learn a lot about people, because I'm finding that people are telling a bit more about themselves.
Especially on LinkedIn, it's maturing in that way.
Exactly, right? So besides learning who the corporate philanthropy officer is or the corporate CSR officer is, they're talking about themselves. I also have a personal interest in small companion animal rescue or environmental conservation. Those are words that you could actually use in your outreach. I love utilizing prospects' words, right? Or contacts words. So that is definitely, I suggest, utilizing LinkedIn. If you're having trouble finding an email address, I'm a big fan of something called Rocket Reach. Rocket Reach is a free service, but they also have online, just rocketreach.com, but they also have different paid services, kind of like LinkedIn. I am a paid subscriber because of the work that I do, but it's pretty amazing. I would say 90% of what I need is within Rocket Reach to find decision maker email addresses.
Never even heard of it. Okay, great.
Oh yeah, highly recommend.
Have you heard of Rocket Reach, Jay?
No, I haven't.
Wow, neither have I. Awesome.
No, it sounds
Okay,
like
good.
a phenomenal resource. I've got a
Okay,
question
cool.
though about the messaging about doing LinkedIn.
Yeah,
So whenever I
me
reach
too.
out to somebody, I should probably go ahead and make an ask right then, or send a link to my website, or do that, and let them know that I'm asking them for money, right?
No, we're taking the same exact philosophy that we talked about in an email, which is, who are you? What's the connection
Good.
to the corporation in terms of mission, vision, and values? And
Good.
what would you like next?
Good.
So that's
So so this is probably a
Can you say
strategy
I'm a
that I should
501c3?
probably implement year round, not just specifically when I'm looking for money, right?
correct. Yes.
Which I should always be looking for money, but so this is something I should just be doing ongoing basis continually, versus just that one time a year right before our event, or right before, our budget time or
End
something
of
like
the year
that.
or whatever. Yeah.
Jason,
End
you
of the
bring
year.
up a fabulous point. The
Yeah.
best time to engage people is when you don't need anything.
Love that.
When you just reach out to them and say, just wanted you to know, this is who we are. This is how I see that we align. Would love to have a 15-minute Zoom sometime to talk more.
Mhm.
They're not going to be used to that because they're used to
Yeah.
people only engaging with them when they need something.
Now
They're
you're talking about differentiation. Yeah.
correct.
Well,
Yeah,
I
so-
want to,
yeah.
So
the reason
good.
I asked that question, because one thing about LinkedIn, and this just it really annoys me.
Mhm.
It's not even annoying now. It's just funny now, but it used to
Yeah.
annoy me. Is I'll get this, hey, Jason, I was just checking out your profile. We got a lot of stuff that seems to be the same. I think maybe you'd really be interested in an opportunity we've got going on, or something.
Yeah.
And I go, well, if you'd really checked out my profile, that you would know that that's not the case at all.
Oh,
Yeah.
Now, I don't know whether it's an auto. Sometimes I know it's
Probably
just
all
Yeah.
that stuff.
it's
I've-
auto marketing,
Well, it's
which
just-
is why
we've
my
seen a
point
lot of
is,
stuff.
don't
Yeah.
rely on that stuff, because
Yeah.
it's just,
Oh, yeah.
it's like taking a writing out a hand note, putting it on the copy machine, running
Mhm.
off 27 copies and sending it out to everybody without a name on it.
Totally.
It's just the same thing. It's just crap.
Yeah.
And
Great.
I guess what I'm saying is, if it annoys you when you get it, it's going to annoy them when you send it.
Right.
The
Right.
person you send it to. It's just kind of a rule of thumb, maybe.
Yeah, but I think if you, again, the more specific you can get, you're in great shape. So
Right.
it's not generated by a bot. So if I'm
Yes.
specifically saying that, I see that you're doing this waterfront project over on East 6th Street.
Mhm.
We have something similar. Would love to talk with you about at some point. That's very specific.
Pointed
But
and
to your
deliberate.
point, Jason, when you're a bit more broader, that does sound a little more suspicious. So when I reach out on LinkedIn, it's extremely specific. I've referenced something that I've seen or that I know specifically about a project they're working on.
Yep.
I keep it extremely short, shorter than even my 150 words I mentioned in the emails I do.
Right.
I
Right.
maybe cap it at 3 sentences.
I was gonna say 150 characters, right? You're using
Yeah,
the Twitter
yeah. I
model.
mean,
It's
it's
140
it's
characters.
really, again, just enough interest that you want to get them to contact you back to say, yeah, let's talk, right?
Totally. 30,000 foot view. You are talking about taking the time, doing the work, and making it
Yeah.
personal every time.
Exactly.
There are no shortcuts to this. Yeah.
That's
right.
exactly right. And I think we talked about that in our first conversation. It's very
Yeah.
popular
Mhm.
now to read articles about the 5 hacks to do this, or
Yeah.
use
There are no
these
hacks.
shortcuts. No,
There are no hacks.
there
Yeah.
are no hacks. And that's
Yeah.
why I'm also a advocate of starting small with this. I think
Yeah.
where a lot of people get in trouble is, they get really excited. I'm going to put together a corporate strategy. They put together a list of 50 companies that they want to contact in a week. You're setting yourself up to fail. Pick one. Just pick
Yeah.
one that you have an interest in.
Yeah.
Set some time out to look at their annual report, look at their website, research the decision maker, and then
Right.
think of an outreach.
Yep.
Really, it's quality over quantity. So don't make these activities like something, you feel really good when you check something off a list or cross something off.
Right.
That's a bad trap. You really want to look at the quality over the quantity in starting this kind of work.
So good.
Hey, Lori, I want to just stop for a second, see if anybody has any questions.
Yeah,
We
great.
did have a question. I think you tried to
We
get a
did-
clarification.
yeah, we did. So it was just like quickly, and I love it because
Basically, does the
you can
same
ask-
thing apply if you're
Yeah.
going to go meet with somebody in person?
Yeah.
You know,
time wise.
besides
I
the
think we're
Zoom
talking about
call,
time frame. I think we're talking about time frame.
Um,
Is that right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
I don't know if they're just in
that's why I
general.
was
So
asking, yeah.
what are your rules for the road whenever I go to meet somebody for the first time?
So,
And
okay, so by that time, the decision maker has an idea of what what your organization does. They're interested enough that they want to physically meet you. This is going to be more than 15 minutes.
For sure.
I've not been in a meeting less than a half hour, and I've also been in meetings that are 90 minutes.
Totally.
I would say most on-site meetings are anywhere from 45 to 60 minutes once you've had engagement and they want to learn more. But I think it's really a good practice to check in on time. It just reminds the corporate decision maker that they're in control. This is their time, and you respect that. That really all goes a long way because, like I said, these are people that have so much going on. Although your priority number one is to get this money, this is priority 5,750 for them. So any type of tell that you could give them, reassurance that this time is yours, you tell me when I need to stop, that just really makes them feel really comfortable with you.
I think that I really hope that's not overlooked. That's like a psychology.
Absolutely. There's a lot of psychology to this. Absolutely.
I mean, you remember like the days of neurolinguistic programming and
oh my gosh.
Right? Back in we were talking about vinyl records, right? You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So it speaks to that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's so funny when it sounds like an anchor when you're talking, hey, are we good on time still? That's like it's like another anchor. It's
Right.
It's interrupting the loop and making sure that you have their attention as well. It's so good. I hope that's not being overlooked by people.
Yeah, and
so.
remember, Trevor, I think we talked about this last time, but when it's a tie at all ends and somebody has met with 5 different people for this 6 figures that they've got, and they want to give it to one person or one organization, if it's a tie at all ends, they're not sure who it should go to, they're going to go back to the person who made them feel the best.
Got it.
Goes back to how they felt. So if you're putting them into a situation where they feel comfortable, they feel in control, they feel like you've made the connection, they feel like they're not going to have to do a lot of work because you've done it for them, you've shown that connection.
Yeah.
Your chances are really good.
Differentiation. What sets you apart? I call it the pink elephant in the room full of gray elephants.
I love it. That's perfect.
It's so good. It's
Yeah.
so
any questions? I mean,
Yeah.
you got, Lori's got so much expertise and
This is
experience,
great.
and I share.
This is so good.
I do have a question I'm going to hit you with here in just a second, but I want to see if anybody else has got one first, and as we go along, encourage you guys to do that. So I'm going to ask a question. I know this was something that somebody brought to me. Okay. And the question was, and I know how I answered it, but I just want to get without my input. They said this was a large publicly traded $1 billion company.
Okay.
She had a relationship with the CEO, the founder and CEO. And she was like, how much money should I ask for? And we get asked this a lot, how much money should I ask for?
Yeah.
And I'd love to get your take on that.
I love that.
Because I think that's something that, there's a lot of paralysis by analysis and
100%.
back and forth. Do I ask for too much? Is it too little? Should I have asked for more? So give us your feedback on that.
Yeah. So here's my take on how much to ask for. If you let this process play out correctly, your contact's going to tell you what they can give you. And that goes back to, there's a few things you can do on the front end. When you look at someone's annual report, especially from large publicly traded companies, they have to list what they're providing. So I know that Coca-Cola Foundation gives over $1 million a year to the Sierra Club, right? So I know that going in. So then if you find local organizations that are getting support from this company that are of similar size, before you even go into this meeting, but you don't necessarily bring it up, you have an idea of what their habits are already. So again, doing that research phase. Yeah. So that's initially. Once you start to meet with someone, if they're truly interested, they're going to ask you very telling questions that are very revealing. They're going to ask you things like, well, how many people do you need for that project? What type of resources? When they start asking about people and resources, they're doing math in their head about how they might be able to support this, right? So, with that conversation, if they're really into this program that you've brought to them or into this conversation, they might just say, well, look, I can tell you that we gave XYZ Corp or XYZ nonprofit $75,000 for something similar. And that has been my process. And it's been my experience. If you let them talk more, they're going to give you what you need. Now, does it always happen that way? Of course not. So there is
don't tell you what they want sometimes.
Right?
Right.
So there is a point where if now we're at a second meeting and we're going to get to, all right, it's time to put a proposal together. If they haven't brought up money, I would, my process is, where are you in terms of, in terms of support? Where are you in your budget in terms of what you could support for this? I just ask. And that's my process. You might get a very different answer from somebody else, but I really think with some good research, you can really vet and get a good sense of what you might be able to get just based on other organizations they support.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah, I think it's, you got to figure out where they're at. It's kind of taking the temperature and seeing what's going on.
There's a trend here. We keep coming back to doing homework, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Sounds like we keep coming back to doing homework.
If you do the front, it's like if you do it right, it's, when you build a house, the house is not going to stand still unless you have a good foundation.
100%.
It's the same thing. If you've got a really good, you start this process. That's why I say start small. Just pick a few. Really get to know these companies, because everybody else is all over the place trying to prospect hundreds of people at once. Totally. That's how this really makes you set yourself apart from others. And they will tell that. They'll be able to tell that.
100%.
Does it necessarily have to be somebody in the C-suite?
No, I don't, unless I specifically have vetted that this person oversees the decision-making for money, I tend to want to go VP or higher. That's me.
Yep. Cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So VP or higher. All right. So my next thing, Trevor, you got any more questions? Cause I got a couple. They just keep popping up.
Mine was more like, once again, 30,000 foot view. It's just like, we talked about this on our previous conversation as well, because it was so good. We keep coming back to it, but there's a theme here: preparation, preparedness, research, brevity of message. I'm just doing a recap here, but we talked about it. We talked about it on our last conversation. I wanted to touch on that too. And we'll stay on topic, but you were talking about nerves. We talked about anxiety, the trepidation that people have going into these meetings, going into these asks and things of that nature. If you're prepared, that can really help with the nerves. You know what I mean? We also talked about nerves being something that, that I used to say nerves only came up when, it was something you really cared about. You got nervous because you cared. So it's not a bad thing. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. But
that's exactly right. I have a whole chapter in my book, the Boardroom Playbook, that talks about feel the fear and face the snake.
Come on now. Yeah.
And, and I use the analogy of the snake because I happen to have worked with a nonprofit that worked with snakes. Like, imagine fundraising for snakes. I did it. So, everyone thinks about the snake as this just, scary creature. But the last thing they want to do is strike at you, because that takes so much of their energy. Snakes, I learned, they don't like drama. They just want to be left alone, and they just want to, just do what they need to do, but they don't like drama. And I thought to myself, wouldn't it be great in our minds if we could just get away from the drama and just do what we need to do? And that's why I utilize kind of the symbol of the snake. You just have to jump past it and do what you need to do. And man, you're just going to feel free.
I think about
love this stuff.
something about the whole thing about being nervous and doing that. And I think one of the things that we forget is that the person on the other side is just another human being too.
Yeah, exactly. Jason.
They woke up that morning and had a fight with their spouse. Their kid,
they dropped their preschooler
their
off.
Kid had a fever. They had to change stuff around. Had a flat tire. And we have this idea because they're this big, powerful deal.
We're just people.
And I'm going to, I've got a friend who I know runs a big company, billionaire, got all the stuff. I coach baseball with him. He's just a dude spitting sunflower seeds like anybody else. Okay. It just, from there, you don't know. And so you got to, there's respect in doing that, but they're just folks. And what I know about them, because I've been kind of on the other side where people come, they go, and somebody said, I'm really nervous. I'm sorry, I'm just a little nervous. I'm like, it's okay.
Yeah.
I'm a little nervous too, and so it's okay to really have that, because we're creating relationships with people. And I think we forget about that. We get so caught up in the money and, how much money they have, how much money we don't have.
Yeah.
I had this conversation with somebody just the other day, Lori, and maybe you can touch on this a little bit. I said, and I just asked her, I said, can you write a check for $10,000 and not miss it to the nonprofit professional? And she said, no, I can't. I said, well, I can't either. I can write one, but I'm going to miss it. Yeah. Okay. But I said, that doesn't mean that you can't have a conversation with somebody that does.
That's right.
We have to take away our feelings of money, our feelings of insecurity, and just know that's okay. Because guess what? I remember a great story, very wealthy guy from Oklahoma City. He's well known around here. His name was Bob Moore. It was genuinely one of the nicest men you could ever meet. Made more millionaires that he helped bring up in business. Yeah. And at the time he was worth about $400 million. But he was sitting on a golf course somewhere in California, and they're looking over this polo. He loved to play polo, and I'll make my story quick. And he goes, that DeBartolo fella, he's got a lot of money. Mm-hmm. It's all relative. Mm-hmm. And so just because they, they're at a big company, or they've got, it took you a little while to work in there to get to it, doesn't change anything. They're still a person. Yeah. And, it's still the basics. It's about your mission. So I just wanted to recap that. And how do you
100%,
deal with that whenever you're talking to your folks about getting through that? Like where the relationship with money.
How do you talk them down?
Exactly. I'm going to go, I'm asking for somebody for $100,000, and I can't even imagine, writing a check for $100,000. And that, because it kind of goes both ways. And Becky, I want this to tie into your question about smaller companies.
Yeah.
Because it's still kind of the same thing.
Yeah. So let me start back to a small nonprofit feeling worthy to be in the presence of a corporate Fortune 500. Mm-hmm. And Jason, you described this beautifully. At the end of the day, the chief DEI officer or the senior vice president, probably a mom or a dad involved in the PTA, just as your organization is the PTA that needs funds. They totally understand that. Right. Maybe it's an aunt or an uncle that's helping to sell the Girl Scout cookies. You can relate to that. One thing that I'm personally involved in a project, we've all been in and out of the hospital or in and out of a doctor's office, and maybe we've had to have testing. Doesn't matter if you're an executive director or you work at the local Dollar General, doesn't matter. We all have the same experience of wait times in a waiting room, or if you have to go in the hospital, maybe wait times to even leave the hospital because someone's got to leave you out and they don't have enough people to wheel you out. So all of those shared experiences, it doesn't matter, who you are in terms of where you work or how much money you have. We all feel that as human beings, right? Mm-hmm. So first of all, keep that in mind. And Jason, that's an excellent point. We have shared experiences, number one. Mm-hmm. Number two, you take that and you utilize that. And it's especially a great opportunity for smaller nonprofits. And again, realize that there's a lot of small nonprofits that don't go to large companies because they feel as though no one's going to pay attention to them, when actually the opposite is happening. Yes. They want to speak with smaller nonprofits for what I said earlier. They realize if they've got an extra $3,000 to spare, that could go a long way for you as a very small nonprofit versus giving it to the multi-location large nonprofit in the area. So, showing a little of that vulnerability, that human side, finding something that connects you goes a long way. And then the last thing I would say that, Jason mentioned, you have to feel worthy that you are deserving of this money. Mm-hmm. That is something I specifically worked on with one executive director who was amazing presenter, amazing in the boardroom. But when it came to the ask, he lacked the confidence. And he even said that because he felt my nonprofit is not trying to cure cancer. It's not providing food or shelter, on those Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Mhm.
It wasn't,
Yeah.
really right.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean it's not worthy. But if you're not feeling worthy, that comes out in your
100%.
presentation.
Oh, it's palpable.
So
Yeah.
you have to change the mindset that you are just as deserving for this, and your stakeholders and those that you serve, that you should get this money. So again, to the title of this webinar, everything goes back to mindset. Absolutely.
So good. Wow. These are, so good. I just love it. Gives me goosebumps.
Hey, and speaking of mindset, I'll just here's another great tip. If you're in a bad mood, don't send emails or make phone calls.
Good. Yeah. Go for a walk. Go for a walk.
A lot of times we're so task oriented that, okay, I put in my calendar that from 8:30 till 9:45, I'm going to do these outreach emails. But an hour earlier, you got a flat tire and you're just, you have to adapt to the day. And I really, really believe, as somebody that used to vet asks that came through, and as somebody who trains people on the ask, and someone who does ask, I've been on all sides of it. You've got to be in the right mindset, because I tell you, it comes through, especially in email, those little nuances. How many times has somebody received an email of yours and maybe they were just kind of like, well, what's wrong with you today, Harry?
Totally.
Nothing. What do you mean what's wrong with me? So you got to keep all that in mind.
People feel it.
Goes back to mindset.
Feel it 100%.
Right.
I love it.
I want to get Becky's question.
Yeah, she has a
Becky,
great question.
Where she's talking about, for a smaller local company, to ask them for sponsorship and underwriting. I want to just kind of give you a little dichotomy between the two things, if I'm using that word the right way. So if I'm using this for myself. So we think about, Fortune 500, 1,000 companies.
Yeah.
It's there's a you got to wade through some stuff to get it. So the contact is not necessarily out in front. You're not going to be able to just walk in the front door and go, "Hi, I'm Jason. I'm here to meet Lori." And Lori's up on the 32nd floor.
Right.
Probably not going to get there.
Right.
I mean, it's
Right
just, and that's the whole point. What she's saying, reaching out through LinkedIn, is how do I get to that person, find out there, get to the attention, because that strategy is specific to that person. Now, I'm going to tell you, small business owners in your location, in your area, because, Lori's saying that they don't have to be in your area. They could be, they could have a headquarters 1,000 miles away, but that doesn't mean that they maybe don't have a presence. They want to do something, or that your organization fits, really fits their need. Or they're aligns with their goals and who they want to help. But on the small deal, sometimes the simplest thing to do is walk in and say, "Hi, I came here to meet, Trevor Nelson, and I just wanted to introduce myself." And I think that's one of the things, because if you could do that with a Fortune 500 company, if I could just walk in and do it, that would be the preferred route to do.
For sure.
Okay. I think that's the point is we're making, because Lori, you worked in, selling underwriting to PBS, but if you could walk into somebody's and just say, "Hi, how are you doing?" and get to them, you would do that, correct?
Oh gosh, yeah.
If it was that simple.
Yeah. Remember, my focus is really on larger corporations.
Yeah.
But I think, Jason, you're what you said is perfect. I mean, with smaller companies or retailers that are in your area that you might want to get involved in your nonprofit, I think a walk-in is a great idea.
For sure.
Yeah. And the hooker connection is community.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
You'll find out a lot of times, just walk in and pop in and say hi. I think I want to tell you something that kind of goes on this. I coached a young man this morning. I was asked to give him some insight. He runs a landscape company, and he was needing some help with salespeople, and he's struggling with it. And when I said, "Well, tell me how you train your salesperson," and he kind of goes, "Well, I took him through this process and that process, and all basically the mumbo jumbo of the sales, and ripping through stuff and doing all that." And we got through the time, but my point where I want to say is, don't think about this as it's not a hack or a shortcut, or I'm going to do it. It's kind of like years ago, I had a guy that I was training, and we were going out working, and he was taking the call, and he literally said this. He goes, he's sitting there going, "Hey, that's a nice family you got back there." He goes, "Yeah, it is. My wife divorced me and left me 2 weeks ago.
Oh no.
You know, and so
Yeah.
basically, the thing is there's no shortcuts. Nobody's gonna do business with you because you ask them about, that you ask them about their family. They're not gonna do business with you. When I say business, give to your organization. That's doing business, because you've got there's no magic shortcut to this. It's still about relationship.
Right.
And I think that's, Lori, that's your point is, you're reaching out and making a connection, and then you're following up on that connection. And you're not asking them for anything. Maybe you make a comment, maybe you do something,
Yeah.
but genuinely take an interest in that person versus just what am I going to get out of them? If I message them 3 times and maybe I get an email, and then I send an email and I call them 3 times and then I get to see them from, the recipe doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. Because if it did, we'd tell you that.
Yeah.
Lori would tell you that.
Oh,
Okay, you get, it's 3 LinkedIn messages, 2
Right.
emails, 4 phone calls, 1 in person, one
Rub sticks
proposal,
together.
and the money
Yeah.
the money flows
Right.
in.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
1
Yeah.
cup of sugar.
I get a lot more no's than I get yeses. But here's
Yeah.
the thing.
That's
My
another thing about mindset. We have
yeses,
to be okay with that, right?
yeah, my yeses and my client yeses are good.
Yeah.
They're
Those are
good
wins.
yeses
Yeah.
because of all the work we've done on
Yeah.
the front end.
They feel
Mhm.
amazing.
So you will
Yeah.
get rejection in this, but you
Yeah.
can't take it personally. You will get, and some people will not respond to you. So you go on to the next one.
You have
But
to
I
be
would
okay with
consider,
that.
if we
Yeah.
talked about how I love the answer no, I love no, because that means we don't have to spend any more time with each other. We move on.
Mhm.
There are some people that say they have the philosophy, well, no just means not right now. I disagree. If you get a no, move on. Your energy is not to be there. So you freed me up. You freed my time to go speak with someone else who's going to resonate with me much more.
Yeah.
So
I love
nothing
that.
to
Yeah, and
No, I
that's
think
where I
that's
think,
huge.
we get zeroed in on, if only, if only Coca-Cola would come in, we could just get one of those grants, we would really
Right.
be there.
Oh.
We're $250,000 this, we could be 2 million if they would just come in and give us a million, $1.75 million grant.
Right.
Yeah.
Just doesn't happen that way. I've never known it to happen that way. Not without some kind of a hidden agenda by the person that you're being used at that point.
Yeah.
Typically, they're buying your, those people are being bought.
Mhm.
I hate to say something like it's nefarious, but that's just what it is.
Mhm.
Because there's another ulterior motive typically.
Sure.
So,
I also want to reach out and let everybody know that I also realize sometimes you may be working with a board of directors that make it sound really easy. Well, XYZ is headquartered. Why aren't we getting money from them?
Right.
Just because somebody's in your backyard doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be a good funder for you.
Totally.
Trust me.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. Sometimes it's harder to work with someone that's right in your backyard, with the few exceptions I talked about earlier, like Coca-Cola, who has their own person just for Atlanta.
Right.
But just because they're physically around you doesn't always make them the best prospect for you in terms of funding. But going back to your question, Jason, about, really focusing on small, I do want to give a really neat example. Think about what's in your backyard that you use every day, but haven't really thought to engage for funding. I'm going to give you a great example. I work with a nonprofit in the New Orleans area that literally has 2 people. Okay. One full-time, that the only one that collects any type of paycheck from it, and one is a volunteer, and then and the rest are volunteers all over. And it's in the classification of marine conservation. So I found out through a lot of questions that my client actually used the local dollar chain every week to buy supplies, not only for herself, but when she would go travel and go see these native species in their habitat, she would take items and gift these items to some people that are living in poor conditions where these species happen to be. And I said to myself, have you told your dollar chain about this?
Right.
I said, no, why would I? Bam. So we find the local regional manager, which is not hard to find. I mean, you just ask the manager of the store, you go, who's your regional manager? Let them know it's a good thing. You're not going to complain.
Right. Yeah.
And we explained what she's been doing for the past 2 years. And then this local, this dollar store chain gave her thousands of dollars in gift cards to use for her future excursions. So again, that's not even something she thought of. But think about who's in your backyard, who's your accountant, who does your taxes, who's supporting your nonprofit from an office perspective, maybe that you're paying. What vendors do you have that might be able to make some introductions for you or have ideas of their own where you might be able to find some funding? Don't be afraid to ask.
I love that.
It's we always say it's who you know. It is who you know, because we all know, it's not the most powerful fundraising tool, our phone, because, and then you've got a lot of people out there who you write checks to, that you're paying. And that's 100%. A great example to go talk to your accountant. Hey, who do you know?
They're not off limits.
Hey, and I think that's the whole content is just creating those relationships to increase them. And Lori, I can't thank you enough. Lori, tell us about your book. Do you mind?
Yeah. So I have a book out. You can get it on Amazon. It's called The Boardroom Playbook, a not so ordinary guide to corporate funding for your purpose-driven organization. And it's a great quick read. If you're a type A person like me, this will be a great book for you. It's just a little over 100 pages, but it breaks out the process of how do you get your mind, your message, and your motion, your actions together to make you more successful to potentially get that sponsorship or funding money from corporate Fortune 1000 companies.
Email.
Hey,
so
how do we contact you?
Sure. So you're welcome to check out my website. I'm at thegrowthowl.com. You can also connect on LinkedIn, as I've talked a lot about LinkedIn.
Easy to find you.
Zoss Kraska at LinkedIn. And those are probably the two best ways to find me and connect.
Julie, it's the Boardroom Playbook, and you can find it on Amazon. Very easy. So,
well, hey, I tell you what, let's just do this. Everybody that came today, how about HJ? We'll just we're gonna send you a copy. So everybody that here today, it's on us, and that's gonna be our giveaway. So everybody's a winner.
Okay.
We might give away a trip too here in a second, but before we do that,
we could frame this and give it to people too, though.
I want to just go out there and give a deal to you real quick and just tell everybody. The first ad went out. It is HJ Bootcamp Dallas. HJ Bootcamp Dallas. It's going to be
April 4th
and 5th.
Yep.
It's limited to 50 seats. This is going to be unlike any seminar deal you've ever done. It's 2 days. It's super. We got it underwritten, so it's super inexpensive to come. If you got to fly in, I get that, but you get the first night, you get 1 night free. It's 2 days. All the food meals during the program is all together. You don't have to pay anything. It's $300. But we got all that covered.
World-class fundraising.
We'd really love to do that. Yeah, Calvin, you said Calvin's going to be on a cruise right now.
That's okay, man.
So that's the deal.
Well, we'll do another one, Cal. You have to just fly to come meet us.
But we'd love to have you come and be a part of it. Again, go to hjfundraising.com. You can sign up there. It's the pre-sign up, so you can get more information and do it.
Get in the best fundraising shape of your life. That's the idea.
Great.
I think, Lori, it's such a joy to talk to you again. I mean that so sincerely. We can't wait to have you on again.
Hey, I said we were going to give away a trip.
Okay.
So we got to do that. So I just doing deal.
Books, trips.
Sandra Gonzalez, she just won a trip that you can use for your next fundraiser to raise more money.
Sandra. Yeah. Hi, Sandra.
Sandra.
No, Sandra from El Paso. Yeah. Hi,
hey.
Sandra. All right. Congratulations. Super cool. And you're welcome, Cynthia. Thank you so much. Absolutely. Yeah. Happy to do it. And reach out to Lori. Lori, a joy. I meant that. I really.
I always have a good time with you guys.
Yeah, we're gonna
appreciate you so much.
We're gonna do it again. So enjoy the heck out of your Thursday. Please keep doing what you're doing because it's really helping people. So it's awesome.
Glad to serve.
All right.
Everybody have a great week. We'll see you back here.
Thank you. Have a great Thursday.
Next week. We'll see you.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.